Welcome to Healing Medicine, formerly the Mindful Healers podcast.
This is the podcast for physicians and healthcare professionals who crave balance and purpose. If you want to rediscover your love for medicine and life, one mindful step at a time, you are in the right place. We are Dr. Jessie Mahoney.
And Dr. Nichang Liang, physicians who bring decades of experience in physician health and wellness and leadership to the wellness conversation. Like so many of you, we felt the exhaustion, the disillusionment, and the weight of a career that demands so much, often at the expense of our own well being.
In this podcast, we explore mindfulness, mindset, and real sustainable health and well-being strategies.
Not as another task to add to your plate, but as a way to experience medicine and life differently.
Each episode dives into practical strategies, coaching tools, and real conversations to help you feel more present, fulfilled, and in control.
When we are healthy and well, we become powerful agents of change.
If you're ready to break free from exhaustion, cynicism, overwhelm, feeling ineffectual and stuck, and rediscover joy and presence, you are in the right place.
A life and a career that truly fits you await.
Reminder that nothing in this podcast is medical advice. Welcome to today's episode of Healing Medicine. And today I have a super special guest, Diana May, who is the woman who taught me how to teach yoga many years ago. And so for that, I'm super grateful. And for all of you who join me for yoga, you're also super grateful to Diana for that. And I thought it would be really fun to have her join me on the podcast and talk a bit about yoga and really how we have both evolved since that time when we were teaching more what I would call strict yoga, and how we've evolved and where we are now and how we've changed, and a little bit about somatics and trauma and chronic pain. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Jessie. It's wild and amazing to be here, and it's been so amazing to watch you soar and switch from being a full-time doctor to full-time yogi and helper of other doctors.
Yeah.
So it's been wonderful to watch that transformation and see how you've taken the teachings of yoga and just went with it, and it's so needed. So thank you.
Yeah. I might actually start with that question. It just came to my mind, but I was going to ask you about your transformation and your journey, but from the outside, and I have no idea what you're going to say, so it's a risky question, but I'm really curious, sort of your thoughts on my journey. Like when you met me, I was a full-time pediatrician and I was sort of doing my own journey with yoga. And I didn't even, I don't know if you know this, plan to become a yoga teacher when I took your yoga teacher training. And now here I am doing this. So I would just be curious what your thoughts are if you want to share. And
Yeah, well, I don't share this joke publicly, although I realize I'm about to say it on a podcast, but for my intents and purposes, it's just me and you here. So I have this dark inside joke when I lead trainings where I should market it by saying, want to quit your job? Do yoga teacher training. Because literally every single training I've led, at least one person has quit their job and started something new, divorced a partner, and went down a completely different path or went through some kind of huge life shift, because ultimately that's what yoga offers us, is insight into who you really are. And so often people get into careers and life situations based on these really wonderful notions. Like, I think being a doctor is so noble and so needed, and we absolutely need
yeah,
doctors.
yeah,
And often, people who get careers as doctors, there's some push along the way, whether it's from family or society, or maybe you were inspired because somebody you loved had a chronic illness or died traumatically and you wanted to be the doctor to fix them, right? So there's all these things people come into their life with, and when they do a yoga teacher training, it's like they remember behind the layers of who they really are and what they want to be doing. And a lot of times it aligns with what they're doing. And sometimes they get this huge insight into something deeper that's been hidden for a long time. And
Yeah.
when I met you, you were one of those amazing, noble, powerful doctors. And I always love having doctors in trainings because you can double guess or like double affirm my like my anatomy
Your
lecture.
anatomy, yes.
Um, so it's really fun to have doctors in there. And I just remember you being super studious and also kind of quiet. Like you were really taking things in. Like you didn't participate as you were very present and participatory, but you seemed very introspective with it all.
Hmm.
So I didn't really know that you were going to be that one who
Yeah. If you had said that, I might not have done the training. So I'm glad you didn't advertise it that way because I'm
I
not sure I was
don't.
ready for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the next year is when your son took
Yeah.
teacher training
Yeah.
because
With you also.
with me also because he saw the
Yeah.
transformation we went through
Yeah.
and he got curious and I was like, wow, that is so cool.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think just seeing you soften, seeing you sort of share your insights and ask certain questions throughout the time, and it's been awesome to see you shine and to see you soar. And yeah.
Yeah. Have you had any other people whose children then came and got teacher training with you?
I think you're the only one.
The only one. Yeah. And I have to say, actually, that I don't know. I think lots of people do yoga teacher training, but that also speaks to your teaching skill that I would love it as a woman. I don't remember how old I was, but almost in my 50s. And I would send my 20-year-old son to also do yoga teacher training that there's something in the way that you teach that's really special. And I think it's the idea that yoga is much bigger than yoga. And it's sort of a tool. I love this to get insight into who you really are. And I think I took that learning clearly to heart because that's really how I use it now is to help people. What I've found in yoga, and I tell people this, I wasn't someone who could do mindfulness because my brain was too busy and I was too held tight or wound up. But when people told you what to do in yoga and sort of told you when to breathe, then I could drop into my body and really begin to listen and hear. And I think that's one of the magical things about yoga.
Yeah. Yeah, my yoga teaching has evolved
Yeah.
and I've always loved like I love moving my body and that's not always been true. I did not grow up an athlete. I grew up very sedentary, more artist type, brainiac type. But once I became a yogi, I loved moving my body and then I discovered I am athletic. I love moving my body. I'm sort of in awe of human movement. And so the style of yoga I started practicing was very vigorous and I was in my early 20s, so that was perfect for me. And then I started to get more people. Like I had this idea that yoga could help everybody because I loved it so much. I was like, this can help everybody. And so people were drawn to that energy. Like the best teachers of yoga are the ones that love it the most, right? And like it pours out of them. And I think it poured out of me and it drew people to my classes and people started coming to my class that had injury or that couldn't move the way my body moved. And so I had to learn quickly how to shift yoga to meet other body types. And that's been an evolution I've taken very seriously. And I'm very in a good way, critical of the term like yoga is for everybody and yoga is accessible because I'm like, if you go into a public class, chances are there's somebody it's not accessible for, and that's okay. Um, so I've wanted to expand how I teach to be more accessible to more people. And that really led me down the rabbit hole of nervous system healing. And I became a somatic experiencing practitioner. And that really shifted my landscape of how I teach yoga. So it's way more trauma informed, way more nervous system based. And in that way, it's more accessible. But as the anatomy junkie I am, I really needed to learn more about like the physicality of the nervous system. So then I trained in applied neurology, and wow, that trifecta. I'm like, I feel so in my zone and in my niche, and I really transitioned to loving helping people with chronic pain, chronic illness, and people who want to move, but maybe aren't obsessed with like handstands or back bends. Like people just want to be in their body, but for whatever reason, they struggle, they, you know, have these chronic pain and injury. So I want to help those people love their body, get to know what's best for them and create a better relationship with themselves and their movement as it is today. So
Well, and when I met you, I always thought of you as like an alignment-based teacher, and you would spend a lot of time with very fine cues to get things in alignment, which when I started was really, really helpful. But I am one of those people who has had chronic pain and trauma. And I remember when some of your early classes, there would always be like a headstand or a handstand, and I have a broken shoulder and broken neck and all these things that just don't work. And so that was never accessible. And I think it was in yoga teacher training where I finally realized that like it didn't matter that I couldn't do that. And I could do whatever I could do, that wasn't a better yogi because it's not, right? That it was really, I was getting out of it what I needed. And so I really wanted to share this, well, yoga for chronic pain and chronic illness and trauma, and the idea of the nervous system and somatics, because it's something that I touch on in my classes and I touch on in retreats. But I think that many people who think of yoga just think of it as the poses or a class or exercise. And so this idea of how you can use it to I'm going to say feel better. But it's not so much as the better, it's like to be in your body and to maybe change your relationship with it and learn to listen to it.
yeah, so I always come back to just the basics of yoga philosophy or the roots of yoga. And one of the word yoga itself, people have an image of yoga mats and handstands and stretchy pants, which I totally get because that's what we're shown over and over again in imagery of yoga. But the word yoga means connection. And in its most basic form, it's connecting your attention to what you're actually doing. So this merging of mind and body, and for a lot of people, that's a spiritual practice. It's like reminds you of that deeper part of yourself. This you're more connected to whatever you want to call it, spirit, energy, divine, God, like whatever you call that, it's a connection. But even if you're not spiritual, just the simple actual practice of paying attention to what you're doing and being in the present moment, like that is yoga.
Mhm.
So I think how I try to transition people away from this idea or perception of asana or physical practice and show them like, oh, just sitting and paying attention to your hand or your breath or your thoughts, like that's yoga. So in that way, I'm never not doing yoga. I'm yoga 24/7, whether I'm on the mat or sitting in this conversation with you.
And I would say, just for the people who listen to this podcast, that is really, really hard for us. I'm going to put myself in that category of just paying attention to my hand or, even monotasking, doing one thing, because we're so used to doing things quickly and doing many things all at the same time and not paying attention to how we feel. In fact, in medicine, we were trained to not pay attention to how we feel on purpose. And so for many people, coming back in and paying attention to their body is actually scary, especially when they feel like it may have, and in my case, I had a lot of strong feelings about how my body may have betrayed me, right? Because I had things happen that shouldn't have, and so it's this idea of really reconnecting to your body and trusting it. And for me, the movement helped me get started. And then I was able to move down the line to some of this other ways of using yoga.
Yeah, I mean, we always have to meet people where they're at. So as teachers, we try to meet people where they're at. And I do honestly and wholeheartedly believe movement is an incredible access point because so many people don't move as much as
Yes.
we want them to. And we like movement is vitality, movement is health, and also rest is health as well. So yeah, I love movement, and movement can be an amazing way to start that process of paying attention where it does move faster. There's more going on. So for the busy mind, it gives you something more tangible to meet you where you're at. And in time, you kind of go a little bit deeper, and all of a sudden you can lay in Shavasana for 1 minute and feel rest. And that's, maybe something people couldn't have done.
So how do you tell me a little bit more about what you've learned about trauma-informed yoga or bringing that trauma lens to yoga and somatics?
Yeah, so I think there's a slight differentiation between being trauma informed or having a trauma lens when you teach and processing trauma with people. Like, so that's a very different thing. So when I say I'm teaching trauma informed yoga, what I mean is I try to honor everyone's experience who comes in the room. And I think having a lot of choice and giving a lot of agency and de-shamifying things is really central to a trauma-informed lens. So whether that means you have a fidget toy the entire class because that helps you stay more present, great. Like you have agency to practice in a way that makes sense to you. You can choose to push yourself really hard today. You can choose to take breaks today. You can choose to use this prop. You can choose to go to the bathroom during your perceived hard part of class. Like you have agency in your practice. Um, so I try to create an environment where that's front and center. And I try to, in a public class, like really mimic this rhythm of the nervous system of pendulation or oscillation, because life is filled with expansion and contraction. So we're going to work a little bit and we're going to rest a little bit. And then we're going to work again and we're going to rest again. So reestablishing a rhythm where it's not all like build up, build up, build up the entire class, keep building heat the entire class, and then you have a peak and then you cool down. I like to have it a lot more pauses and punctuations in the class so that people have that one moment to check in with themselves and maybe choose a different path if they need to. Um, and then on the flip side, or the other route of like somatic trauma processing, that is a skill set of working directly with the nervous system and literally processing trauma imprints in the body. Um, and that is like I did my somatic training in that. I'm qualified to do that, but I don't think that me teaching a yoga class and you coming to my yoga class means you're going to process your trauma.
Right. Right. And that I think it's important for people to realize that's not what yoga is about. Processing trauma that happens other places specifically.
I think
But I do
it's
think
helpful.
there is a connection in sort of becoming aware of it. And I love that you have blended the two because I think very often many of people aren't thinking about trauma being held in the body or being held in the nervous system. And we're not even aware that it's in our nervous system. And so they do sometimes, I think that trauma, I see it come up for people during a yoga class that they maybe weren't even aware of, or, you used to, you're the one who always said that people cry in pigeon and that's okay. And I think that it's a space where it's okay to release emotion and for emotions to come up. But when they do, then you need to find someone who can help you work through those.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, if you're in a yoga class and you realize you're like, oh, like I'm in pigeon and I have this wave of grief and maybe some flashback memories
Yeah.
coming back even. In an ideal world, then you get hooked up with a somatic therapist and get all the necessary support you need to really be held in that container and to process what is coming up. And I don't think that happens all the time. And people survive and it's fine. And some people even make progress in creating their capacity to handle that. And but yeah, I always wish people, I think the somatic therapeutic techniques and the one-on-one work is so critical for like this deeply healing process. And yoga is very supportive of it.
Mhm, mhm. So, let's talk a little bit just about the nervous system and how you bring the nervous system into yoga. I've been in some of your classes, and you do a lot of different things than you used to do. So I think just sharing some of how you blend nervous system into yoga would be interesting.
Yeah, well, aside from the whole agency thing and just offering a lot more choices, one thing I'll say is that I've done a lot more of my own somatic trauma healing and work. I've grown my own capacity so that I'm not taking things as personally. So the more grounded and regulated I can be, then I step into that space and I have more choice, I have more options, I can hold a better container. So I think that's huge. If you want to share space or hold space, definitely do your own personal healing work. Um, and then I really try to, I've been doing a lot more like slower, repetitive movement. I call it laying down yoga.
Yes.
That's, so we're laying down and it's really about unwinding patterns or like rocking back and forth. And, often if there's tension held in the body, let's say your shoulders up, like you're like, oh, my shoulders are always elevated. I have
Mhm.
so much tension. And, you know, that is part of the startle reflex. That's often part of a fight or flight response that's stuck in your body. Your shoulders are in, your adductors are engaged. So you're trying to like go into this protection mode. And that's no amount of stretching is gonna get rid of that, right? It's a state in your nervous system.
And I'll say the physician state is that all the time. And you almost have to have that. Like when you do 24-hour shift in the hospital, you are in fight or flight 99% of the time. And so we get stuck in it. And that's where I think this type of yoga and bringing this lens to yoga can be really, really helpful for people or
Yeah.
practicing with someone who is trained in it and knows about it.
Yeah. And I always try to remind people your nervous system is doing the exact right job for you. And sometimes we need to be in these fight or flight states. Like you're saying, if you're doing a 24-hour shift in a hospital, you cannot be regulated to do that. Like that just wouldn't physiologically be possible. So we need our system to be flexible. And when we're in these fight or flight stages, it's usually for a really good reason. Sometimes we actually need it. We're on a 24-hour shift.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's by habit. We don't need to be in it, but we're kind of stuck there.
Well, and I think it's the learning for me, that's what was so helpful is this is where you can learn a different way or practice. And my brain is going back to, I can't remember, I did a recent training with you and Veronica, and I don't remember what it's called, but I remember vividly the reorienting your brain to pleasure and like the practice of receiving, which I think for people who are in the other mode all the time and we're always doing and achieving and saving lives, we are not oriented to pleasure. And so it's to recognize for me that I had to pay attention to that and I had to practice is really, really helpful. And I think this idea for people in chronic pain, right? We're oriented to chronic pain, but we can also add in an orientation to pleasure and other things and have a little bit more balance, same as our nervous systems can be balanced.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that because pleasure is physiologically required for regulation. It's not um, positive mental attitude. It's not
Not
a
earned.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
not the spiritual bypassing. Like
Yeah.
it's actually a physiological need of your system to be regulated. So when we're in these fight or flight states or the survival modes for extended time, whether we need it or it's just now a stuck pattern, we get tunnel vision. That's part of the how the nervous system functions. We get tunnel vision on the problem.
Mhm.
Um, and so these little practices of orienting to pleasure. And I'll say I work a lot with a lot of people with chronic pain. So pleasure is not possible for them to feel. They don't feel pleasure, but what I've noticed works well is what doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
So what feels a little less painful. Like, so noticing the differentiation between this thing really sucks and hurts, this
Mhm.
thing hurts a little less. So, having your system notice these two different things, it's like, okay, the differentiation is important for this beginning of oscillation or pendulation between pain and less pain, and then maybe in time, pain and neutral, and
Mhm.
maybe in time pain and ease or pleasure or something like that. But our system needs to register something easier, pleasurable, and that's showing your nervous system you're safe.
Yeah.
I'll
And
you
how do
go.
you show your nervous system that you're safe? Because I thought that was just kind of mind altering.
Yeah, people think it's quite complex, but it's actually very, very simple. And so, a question I often ask clients is, when in the last couple days have you felt most yourself?
Mhm.
And sometimes they're like, it was I had no, at no time, like it's just been like the most horrible few days. I'll usually double down. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna ask you again, like think a little harder. Like, is there anything in the last few days that was less horrible or that you felt a little more yourself? And they're like, oh, well, I did talk to my sister on the phone, or I did take this yoga class. It's like, oh, your body shifts. Like when you remember the phone call, or you remember seeing your cat, or you remember looking at a tree when you drank your morning coffee, even if it was a split second. Your
Mhm.
whole system shifts when you remember this. I call it an inner resource.
Yeah.
So sometimes I have to really double down, like, okay, I know everything sucks. And we will get to that. Like, I want to spend time because that's important too. But like, I'm going to double down. Tell me the smallest thing where you felt a little more yourself.
Yeah. And I think part of that's just shifting the attention to like there are these moments, but we tend to miss them. And for me, I just want to say, I think yoga, as we were talking about pleasure, has become part of my pleasure. Like that's where I find pleasure. And so I think for some people, it's really hard to think of yoga as like, oh, that's the pleasure. But for me, it's like an hour of pleasure, even if there's parts where you're working a little harder or you're doing it all lying on the ground. Most of it has become that over time. It's like, and my thought here is it's a place I allow that even if I'm teaching, I allow it to be all, pleasure, feel good. Someone said that I use these words in my class a lot, like let it feel amazing. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even notice, but I do. And so now that we're thinking about this pleasure, I'm like, oh, I think that's maybe what I'm trying to bring into it. I hadn't thought about it in that way. But I remember when you both talked about that in that training, that it just blew my mind that like, oh, it is something we have to balance things out. And so finding it, whether you find it in yoga or whether you find it with your cup of coffee or doing something else, super important. Do you, one other thought that I wanted to mention is just the idea of yoga and menopause, because menopause is a huge thing. And I am of that age, and you are of that age, and many people who listen to this are of that age. And so, age phase, whatever you want to call it. Do you have thoughts on how yoga can be helpful for people there and why it is?
Yeah, so much.
So
So
many.
there, with your people and anyone listening. So I did go through early menopause. I went through it at 35. I'm now almost 40. So I'm 5 years post menopause. And I didn't know I went through it at the time. But now in reflection, when I realized I was going through the shifts, everything made sense. I was like, oh, all my joints ached. The yoga
Yeah.
practice, the physical practices I was doing no longer worked for me. Every joint in my body was screaming at me all the time and all sorts of other stuff. And then I'm now a certified menopause yoga teacher. So and knowing what I know about the nervous system and going through this shift is there's our body is it's like, second puberty. We need even more resourcing.
Mhm.
And I think yoga can be an incredibly helpful tool for so many people to be more in tune with what you need and to allow yourself to resource.
Mhm.
And I understand that, often when women are going through menopause, they're at a stage where maybe they have kids that they need to take care of, or they're still working their jobs that they have to work. So there's really not a lot of space in people's lives to focus on self-care as much, which often can exacerbate the symptoms that you might be
Yep,
experiencing,
yep, yep. Yeah.
um, and all sorts of other nuances there. But I do find that if you can lean into what your body's telling you, like often symptoms are communicating something. So if you can look at whatever symptoms you have as communication of a need, what can you do to listen to that communication and to honor those messages you're getting? And often it's to rest more.
Mhm.
Often it's to do what you want more. It's to say no to more things. It's to not caretake as much. This is general. It's going to be
Yes.
unique to everybody. And when I hear that, I'm like, oh, that's all pleasure-based practices.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of the messaging that I hear in sort of the physician world is we're also really worried about protein and lifting weights and doing all of this stuff. And I hear less about, which isn't to say that's not also needed. I'm sure that there are absolutely reasons for that too, but less about the rest and the listening and the allowing and the kind of reprogramming to a lifestyle that works for your new body, um, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, and yes, the protein and the lifting and all that, like that is amazing too. I try to caution that only not because of the scientific need of like, we're going to be losing more muscle mass and we have to protect our bone health and we have to protect our cardiovascular health. But I caution against it only because as women, I know from experience, there's so many messages of perfectionism and clinging to our youth and our value is in our bodies. And, I want all women to feel free in their body, even if it changes, like even if it gets a little bit softer. Like I want you to love your body and to say F these societal standards that say I have to look a certain way or be a certain way to be valued. Like I want to be part of this movement where, yes, I understand that, and there's a lot of grief around that, but like I want to empower women to radically love themselves, and that
Mhm.
this is a transition where we can really make some big shifts and say F you. Like there's a lot of fire and a lot of,
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of moodiness that comes with this menopause transition
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is to say F those societal standards and like I'm going to do what I want to do. So to me, I like that.
I
So
think yoga helped me value my own body, like what it could do and what felt good. It helped me know it much better. I didn't really know it before that. Maybe I wasn't someone who always hated it per se. I just didn't really know it, and I didn't value what it felt and what it could do and what it couldn't do. And I had had some um, physical issues that were somewhat traumatic. And so at that point, I just kind of disregarded it, right? I was like, all right, well, now we've been in betrayal. And so I see yoga as a way to really get to know it and to get to know it on any given day. Like someday I'll wake up or I'll be teaching and my joints will hurt. Or on another day, I'll feel great and have energy. And you just never know. And all of that is your body. And I love the idea of pain as a message. It's a clue. It's like a text message. Pay attention over here. And could we bring to that the non-judgment piece of it? Like if it's a message, then we can listen and adapt and change, whether it's a menopausal message or another, an inflammatory message or whatever it is.
I just got this memory, and I don't know if it'll relate, but because I used to do yoga and backpacking retreats, and
Yes.
led backpacking retreat, and I had done the route before, and I was gonna guide everyone to this like really amazing viewpoint, and we were gonna do yoga on this epic viewpoint. And of course, there was like torrential thunderstorms the night before, and it was this horrible, like, it was just not a fun backpacking trip. It was really challenging, and everyone got soaked overnight, and all of our stuff was wet. And we were hiking to this vista point, and the sun came out. And the guide, like the actual wilderness guide, she was like, "Oh, the sun's out. Let's stop here and air out all of our stuff." And I was like, "No, like, I want to go to the vista point. Like, we have to make it." And the guide was like, "But the sun's out now. So, like, let's take advantage of the sun being out." And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I struggled, but I was like, she's probably right." So we stopped and we unloaded all of our stuff and put it in the sunshine, and just it wasn't what I thought our ideal resting spot was going to be, but the sun was out and this was our time. So, and it dried our stuff, and we all had a wonderful experience. And I just always remember that. I'm like, it's kind of like menopause, where, yeah, when you have the energy, like, you might have this vision of where you think you're going,
Yeah.
but when the sun comes out and you have the energy, like, that's your time. And um,
And
yeah,
I think that's something that, whether menopause or anything in life, that's something we're taught to disregard. It's like, no, we're supposed to get to the top of the mountain. And I'm going to relay another story about yoga and your backpacking because it's funny. I don't know if you remember it, but, and then I want to pivot a little bit to a thought about retreats. But I signed up to go on one of your yoga and backpacking trips. I don't know if you remember this. It was the one in Big Sur. And it was during some huge torrential rainstorm winter that was very unexpected. I don't know if it's the same trip, but I met, so we had our pre-meeting. And at that pre-meeting, I just had this clear sense, and I was doing it. I really wanted to do it. I wanted to do the hard hike, and I wanted, like, this was going to be me taking care of myself and like doing something for me, and proving I could do it at almost 50. And then the weather forecast was like just disastrous. Anyway, I decided not to go before you left. And it was really hard for me to decide not to go because, like, when I pay and sign up for something, I'm gonna go. But it was actually I still remember it as a very, not going was a really great experience for me. And I know that it downpoured and you ended up having to come back early or whatever, but it for me to just say I was not even going to try. I was not going, and I didn't want to do that, and it didn't sound fun, and that was okay. Because meanwhile, I was like, I want to go on a yoga and backpacking trip. It was on my list. It reminds me a bit. I also at similar time wanted to learn how to surf. And I took some surfing lessons, and I was like, I don't want to learn how to surf. I don't actually like getting knocked off into the waves and getting sand in my bathing suit. And I had this vision of it that was very glorified, and I was like, actually, that's not me. And one of the things that I think this whole journey has really helped with is knowing what's me and not me. But the really beautiful part of that story is before the trip, I bought myself new hiking shoes for the trip because I didn't have the right ones. And I'm still using them today. I use them almost every day where I live now. So I think of you every time I put them on. I'm like, these were for the trip I did not go on. And I felt so proud.
such a symbol of
Yeah.
listen to what you really want. And
Yeah.
it's like actually amazing. Anytime somebody says no in a session with me or in a yoga class, I freaking celebrate it, because for so many of us, especially women, it's so hard for us to say no. And especially doctors, I'm sure, where you like have to, like, you're trained to.
Signed up and I was going to do this hard thing, right? And I was like, but I don't want to. And I was like, oh, I don't have to, actually.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing. The one thing I wanted to reflect on also was something that came up at another, I did go on another retreat, which is not a backpacking retreat, but a relaxing retreat of yours. Well, a yoga, but relaxing retreat. And you talked about this idea of co-regulating your nervous system. And in that experience, it was sort of how our nervous systems co-regulate with the people around us, which is a really cool thing on retreats and a really cool reason to go on retreats. What has come to my mind is that it also works in the opposite way. And for those of us who work in medicine, our nervous systems are co-regulated with well, I'm thinking really of the beats of the hospital, but also the other people that we're working with and the stress of, particularly I'm thinking of ER doctors, like the co-regulation of nervous systems working in an ER has to have just this wild effect on people that we don't appreciate. And so I'm curious your thoughts on both ends of it.
Yes, I definitely, I'm not an ER doctor, but I can imagine that there's so much dysregulation happening because everyone who comes in is like literally in a miserable state or life and death state. And their dysregulation is going to be so much greater than any regulation you might be able to have. So I would just, honor that and say like it makes complete sense why you might feel like complete crap at the end of a shift, even though you love what you're doing and you're saving lives. Like it makes total sense if you feel like crap by the end of the day. It makes total sense that you need like a full day to crash and then a full day to do nothing and then a full day to enjoy yourself, and you don't get those days,
Yeah.
right? So
Or you need to, if you're going to have a long career, I actually really emphasize this, you actually need to create those days. And
mm,
that the way that we were trained that you would work all this time, like that's actually not possible in the current system of medicine that we have. You have to have rest and recovery days, not just for like sleep, but literally for your nervous system to be able to survive is what it feels like to me.
and to remind yourself that not everybody is coming into the ER. Like regular life is not people coming into the ER. And your system needs time to catch up. So you need to get 100% create as best as you can, create those boundaries, take 2 or 3 days off in a row, take more vacations. Like you need to prioritize your own health and care, period.
Yeah. So let's talk a tiny bit about retreats because we both do retreats and we do very different retreats and they're both super cool. And so I would love to hear just what you think the value of retreats are. I always like to, and you still do them even though you're doing all these other things.
Yeah, retreats are one of my absolute favorite things, and I have done almost 40 retreats throughout my career, and I've done different kinds, different styles. I've even struggled with retreats before, and now I've really landed in a place where I'm like, I have a vision of retreats and I'm on board with them. Um, I love to do them domestically. So I just think that aligns with my values a little bit more. I love travel. I've done international retreats, but I think I sometimes struggle with going to different countries and if I did that, I would want to find a really ethically aligned community centered retreat center. And I'm like, I'll just stick domestically. It's like this is where I'm at.
Well, and one thought that comes to mind there is this idea that the purpose of the retreat is the rest and recovery. And I think many times people want to also have the travel and the adventure in it. And that's a lot to do all in one piece. It's not that there aren't beautiful things that you could see, but when you have to travel, and travel these days is a lot, that it may also detract from the retreat experience.
Yeah, so now I just really I love this sort of fusion. I'm such a nature person. I'm not as hardcore as I used to be. I'm way softer. But I love connection to nature. To me, nature is the ultimate co-regulator. So I want to be really close to nature. I now live in a concrete jungle. I don't have access to nature like I had when I lived in the Bay Area. So I know I need that more. So I love glamping retreats where it's a really great fusion of like all the creature comforts. I want hot water. I want comfortable beds. I want a nice space
Me too.
to practice yoga in. I want a really amazing chef preparing me nourishing meals. Like I want that luxury. And I want a lot of space in nature and quiet time in nature. And I want really nourishing practices. And then I want like community time. The older I get, the harder it is for me to maintain friendships. Um, and the more I realize how it's 100% necessary for my nervous system, for my vitality, like I need to be around good people. And
Mhm.
retreats draw the best
They
people.
do.
And then we're all in like our best, like even if there's fear or nervousness or like people going through their own stuff, like we all are human. We're not like, oh, we're only great people with the only the best. Like we're human on these retreats.
Yeah.
Like we toot, we fart, we,
Yeah. Yeah.
get awkward,
Yeah.
we might hibernate, like all that's welcomed, but there's just this, you spend the weekend together and you go through this experience together, and all of a sudden you're like, dinner lasts 5 hours and everyone's laughing and cracking jokes. And it's just, we need to be around good people and to be vulnerable with real people in real life. And there's just nothing like that out there. Like retreats are so wonderful to fill our social cup, even if you're introverted, even if you're socially awkward.
Yeah. Well, you're so we have very similar visions on retreats, like the nature and all the comfort and all the good food. And to me, I think the value of that community and connection and realness is so important. And what I love about where you do them, and where I do them is we're not at big resorts and we're not in these big sort of spaces with um, all the things. It's really to the most important things that nourish us in all the ways, the connection and the friendships and it's so um, it, looking back now, I think we probably met about 8 years ago, maybe a little around that. And I'm thinking like, it's no wonder actually that we've stayed connected. As I'm hearing you talk today, I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense. Because you said that, I was like, wow, yeah, we're pretty aligned. So it's funny because you don't realize that at the beginning of meeting someone, that how aligned you are, until you've traveled such a beautiful path. So do you want to share, as we wrap up, just a little bit about what you are doing now, and in case people are interested in that? And I will put in a plug that Diana teaches yoga still a couple times a week, and I still try to go. It's my birthday month, and you sent me my free birthday class, so I'm definitely coming. That's like gonna get me there. But you can join her, and she teaches online, thankfully, because you moved away, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And she has these amazing retreats, and she also does this somatic work. So, do you want to share a little about that and how people can find you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you sort of laid a lot of it out. I teach 3 public classes online that I will almost always teach public group classes because it makes it like I grew up on group classes. It changed my life. I want to have that as an offering to the community. So I teach 3 public online yoga classes. I work mostly one-on-one with people who do have chronic pain or trauma that they're working through. And I absolutely love that work. But also I teach training. So I'm doing a neurosoma yoga training. So if you do teach any kind of movement, if you're working with clients, I teach very practical, easy ways to implement brain-based techniques and brain health through into your classes and movements like right now to help people. So that's a really fun online training that I honestly feel like the applied neurology piece and the somatic piece is going to be a requirement for movement and professionals in the next 10 years. It's just going in that direction. So I'm really happy to be offering trainings on that. And yeah, that's,
Yeah.
I have like a million more things, but
Yeah.
that's it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, I want to thank you for coming and having this conversation. It was super fun to explore all the things yoga and how yoga is in everything.
Thank you.
And I will share the information about how to reach Diana in the show notes.
Great. I'll see you soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us. Be sure to stay on after the sound of the singing bowl for our mindful moment offering to practice.
Please check the show notes for additional resources and insights, and please explore our other episodes.
If our message resonates, we'd love to connect further. Please share this podcast with colleagues, friends, and family members. And remember, when you work with us, you don't just consume information, you create real change.
We offer coaching, mindfulness experiences, workshops, retreats, and talks. Visit healingmedicinepodcast.com to learn more.
Please note the content of this podcast is not medical or life advice. Always participate in our mindful moments safely.